Well, here's what's coming up tonight on NFL Total Access. The independent disciplinary officer has made a ruling. Deshaun Watson has been suspended for the first 6 games of the season. Kyler Murray's contract has actually had the NFL world buzzing. We go one-on-one with his head coach, Cliff Kingsbury. Plus, how can Daniel Jones snap an ugly playoff drought for the Giants? And with an influx of talent heading to the AFC West, we'll tell you who really stands out as the best. And with that, we actually welcome you inside our NFL Network studios. It is a fresh edition of NFL Total Access. David Carr, LT, ready to rock and roll. I'm Mike Yam, and there is a ton to get to over the course of the next 2 hours, including jumping around the league to various camps. But guys, we know what we're starting with, the major news of the day. The Deshaun Watson ruling. It came down. Former U.S. District Judge Sue L. Robinson released a 16-page report in which she determined the Cleveland Browns quarterback should be suspended 6 games for violating the league's personal conduct policy. Now, the NFLPA will not appeal the decision. The league has 3 days to decide if they want to appeal the ruling. For more, we head to Ohio, where Tom Pelissero and Steve White are standing by with more.
Mike, the NFL had asked for a minimum 1-year suspension for Deshaun Watson. It ends up being 6 games from Judge Sue L. Robinson. The league now must weigh, Steve, whether or not it is worth filing an appeal. If 3 days to do so, if they do, the NFLPA would have 2 days to respond. Then there's really no specific timeline for Roger Goodell or his designee to hear that appeal. The NFL Players Association already fired a warning shot in a statement last night in which they called upon the NFL also to not appeal this decision. In other words, if the league does appeal and the suspension ends up getting increased, then there's a very real possibility this could end up in federal court and drag on indefinitely and most likely into the regular season.
Yes, and we've seen something like this before where the Ezekiel Elliott case, Tom, where his case went to the federal court, his case for violating the personal conduct policy, went to the courts. He played the first 8 games of the 2017 season before accepting his 6-game suspension. Who knows if this is where it's headed? The Browns don't know, and just talking to people here, they're just not sure exactly how the NFL is going to take this or where they're going to take this. But in a statement released by team owners Jimmy and Dee Haslam, they said they will defer to the objective judge, Sue Robinson. And Kevin Stefanski came out and said this was a collectively bargained officer who came up with his decision. So those are not so subtle shots saying, hey, the league and the players union had somebody who they deemed fair come up with this type of ruling, and that's what should stick. And quickly, Tom, on the field, we saw Deshaun Watson today still taking the majority of the first-team reps. Jacoby Brissett, his backup, was taking reps also. And head coach Kevin Stefanski said at some point they may have to adjust their schedule because right now they're thinking Jacoby Brissett will be the Week 1 starter.
And asked about Deshaun Watson, Kevin Stefanski repeated what he said back in March in that he does not take it lightly, the impact that this decision has had on people. He said he's spoken to women in the organization, women in the community, that the Browns value all their fans, and they don't want anyone to feel as if they're being dismissed. Mike?
Well, Tom, this is obviously step 1 in this process, and as both Tom and Steve lay out for us, this is a fluid situation. So we're just going to go off of what we know right now, which is the first 6 games and that suspension. Where does that leave the Browns from a football perspective?
Yeah, so I think when you look at their schedule-wise, you can say their first 4 games, they have the second easiest schedule in football. We know it's going to be Jacoby Brissett at the quarterback position for them. If Jacoby Brissett can go 3-1 in those first 4 games, I think it sets them up well to possibly go 3-3 over the next couple of weeks. So when Deshaun gets back, they're 3-3. You got to believe, David, that even if Deshaun starts slow, he can get 7 wins. He can go 7-4. Now, the bulk of those games, to the Browns' credit, and I'm sure they're delighted about it, most of those games in the beginning will not be against division opponents. Only one game will be against division opponents. So it sets them up to possibly still be a playoff team, because that's what we're talking about right now. Can they make the playoffs? Are they a playoff team like 2 years ago with a guy like Deshaun Watson?
Yeah, regardless of how you feel about the 6-game suspension, it is what it is at this point, and it sounds like everyone is kind of happy with it. The independent arbitrator decided this. We'll see where it goes with the NFL, but when you look at the timeline now, 6 games, just like you laid out, it's going to be a very interesting start. The only thing that I get nervous about with Deshaun is when he does come back and he does play week 7, it's going to be over 600 days since he's played quarterback in the NFL. Now, I've played quarterback in the NFL. I didn't ever take 600 days off, but it was hard every time you went out there. Even when you take that little gap from OTAs to come back to training camp, there's still an element of, oh, I haven't done this in a couple weeks. It's so fast, LT, as you know. The game is incredibly fast. Things move at a tempo that you can't even imagine. And it's
even
more
a bye week, coming back from a bye week.
Right, it's just different. Yeah. It's just a different feel, and it's hard to explain and put into words unless you've been there. Deshaun has clearly been there, but he hasn't been there in a long time. So that's the only thing that I get nervous about. Now, this is the best team that he's ever been on, my personal opinion. It's the best offensive coordinator system for his style. Going back like 3 or 4 years ago, I was all about him getting in this type of system, and now he has 2 dynamic backs, good offensive line, good defense. They're in a good position to make a run like you laid out brilliantly. Yes, they could go out there and win 7, 8 games. Absolutely, no doubt. The only thing I'm worried about is ring rust for quarterbacks, and it's a very real thing. You take that much time off, it's going to take you a little bit of time. Now, does that hurt them trying to get to that playoff?
Well, it's fortunate for Deshaun that he, as you mentioned, he have 2 beasts in the backfield.
Yeah, huge.
You know, and Nick Chubb, who is absolutely one of the best runners in the National Football League, and then a guy named Kareem Hunt, who's not too bad.
Good.
So those first 2 weeks when he is rusty, they're going to have to carry the load until he's ready to kind of come into his own.
Do you manage him differently in the preseason? Just for clarification purposes here, he will be able to play in the preseason games. He won't be able to practice through the first 3 weeks of the regular season. Come week 4, he can get practicing with his team again. But do we see the majority of the reps in the preseason go to him?
It's going to be a balance because you got to get Jacoby ready. You got to get those quarterbacks ready. But I would play Deshaun as much as possible in the preseason. I would play him as many times as you can to still prepare for the season. Obviously, get your quarterbacks ready that are going to play. But he hasn't played, like we said, in forever. So get him out there and let him get some of that rust off during the preseason. It'll obviously be fun for us to watch and see Deshaun playing in this system, what it's going to look like. I think it could even excite his teammates, saying, hey, man, in a month and a half, we're going to have this guy playing quarterback for us. So I think it can go a long way in helping Deshaun get ready and his team.
Yeah, if it is 6 weeks, week 7, it's the Baltimore Ravens. Good luck against that defense, right? Maybe we'll pound on the rock.
Welcome back.
Pound the rock.
Just
on the rock.
Give him the football and let him run. All right, meanwhile, some other news coming down earlier today. Quarterback Kyler Murray testing positive for COVID. The team will get him back when he's finished with protocol. Our Andrew Siciliano and Kurt Warner in Glendale, Arizona for camp and spoke with his head coach, Cliff Kingsbury.
We have some news.
Yes, we do.
Kyler Murray, we just put on the screen here, you made the announcement, has COVID, so he has to sit out for 5 days. How is he doing?
Yeah, the symptoms aren't too bad, and so he's feeling better by the day. It's unfortunate. He'll be out 5 days. We got Colt McCoy going today, getting the 1 reps. When I talked to our media relations guy, I said, I know Kurt's going to be pushing for those 1 reps if he's up there. So
that's right.
I was waiting for him to make that play.
He can get out of there.
They need an arm.
Would he have practiced? Because I know he had a sore wrist a couple of days ago as well, didn't practice Saturday. If not for the positive test, would he have been out there today?
I think so, yeah. We may have limited some throws, but we would have had him out there doing something.
How big is 5 days? Like, I know we all the time look at it, oh, it's training camp, it's 3 or 4 weeks, but 5 days at the beginning of training camp, how big is that for a young quarterback?
I think any of the days that you don't get to be out there and building that chemistry with your guys is tough. Obviously, him going into year 4, same system. He's very comfortable with the communication, you know, the knowledge of where to go with the football. But, yeah, anytime you can build a relationship, particularly getting Hollywood in here, you would like to see them get some work. But just part of the game in this day and age.
What about the idea, because I know you schedule everything out. Hey, this is how we're going to install things on day 3, 4, 5. Are there things that you have to adjust in your plan already going, well, Kyler can't miss this aspect of what we were going to install on this day?
Yeah, that's a great point. There's definitely some key concepts that are maybe based upon what he can do as a quarterback, athleticism-wise, or concepts he loves that we'll back up in our install and get him hit whenever he's back.
All right, this has been a major topic of conversation. It was a topic of conversation even before Kyler got that big contract. Can Arizona finish better? I mean, Emrob was on this set saying, no, I won't even give him a contract. I want to see this team close. And the proof is in the pudding here. It hasn't always looked pretty. Is there an explanation? Is there something you guys would point to as to why we're getting a little bit of a fall off down the stretch in these seasons?
Well, yeah, I mean, you know, I always think that it's coach's job a lot of times to self-scout throughout the season.
Yep.
And I know, especially after those first 4 games, it's critical because the first 4 games are typically when you can add new wrinkles and different things. And maybe you catch a defense off guard from time to time. But after those first 4 games, teams typically get what you want to do well, and they try to take that away.
That's right.
That seems to be the problem that has happened to the Cardinals. They don't do a good job of self-scouting. So when teams take something that they do well away, they have no answer for it. And part of that is on Cliff Kingsbury. We can't put it all on Kyler Murray because the coach has to prepare the player for what he's going to see out there. Now, having said